Hello, my name is Ryan Dow, and welcome to My Fellow Cartoonists, an interview series where I offer an opportunity for cartoonists to pry themselves away from their drawing boards and socialize like human beings. Today's episode features Robert Bob Algeo. Hi, how's it going?
Good, it's going great.
I don't know what I'm doing. So this is my first time trying to record a podcast on my own. I've been guests on a lot of podcasts before.
Is this your first? Is this your first hosting?
Yeah, this is my first attempt at hosting one. So yeah,
I'll do my best to make you look as hosty as possible.
Yes, thank you. And your name is Robert Bob. I already forgot your last name. I should have written it down.
It's Algeo. It's
Algeo.
Algeo. Yeah,
okay, that's good because I probably would have mispronounced it. Anyway,
I get a lot of Allegro.
Yeah,
people invent an R. And
well, that sounds like kind of musical. Then, like I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, it floats right off the tongue.
Yeah,
and I'll spare you and your audience the politically incorrect schoolyard version as well. But
okay.
they can probably figure it out.
All right. So we're basically in World Monster HQ Studios here right now.
Yeah. And
we both have space here. We both have desk space here. We're both cartoonists. I'm Ryan Dow. And I make a wide variety of stuff. And you seem to make a lot of a variety of stuff too. So.
Well, I mean, I try to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, some people might look over the comics that I've done and see variety.
Yes.
I guess sometimes when I look over it, I see, meandering indecision about what kind of comic I should make, but yeah, I mean, I try to do something different each time.
Well, I did go through your website. I did try to prepare for this and read through your comics.
Well, now I'm nervous.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was nervous too, cause I'm some of them I think I like 30. I liked,
sure.
I liked Hum because, I don't know. You've got a certain level of ambition that I don't have. I tend to keep everything really simple, maybe too simple. But with Hum, it's I kind of assumed at some point that this person is schizophrenic.
Well, yeah,
either that or he's in another universe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's maybe, I'm going to go ahead and assume there's at least one member of your audience who hasn't read it.
Yeah.
So I'll sort of,
fine.
It's that book is about, when I was writing it, I was very interested in conspiracy theories and alternative political theory and stuff like that. And I had also read this article about these things called number stations. Have you ever heard of those?
I had not, no.
So there are these mysterious radio signals, kind of throughout the world, and people will occasionally discover them, and they most often take the form of someone just reading a sequence of numbers.
Okay.
And occasionally there might be a word or a pause or a tone or something of that nature. And for a long time, people have assumed that those are radio signals for spies and clandestine stuff, And so I sort of, kind of became interested in maybe exploring what it might be like to actually be working in that environment. Okay. And so anyway, where the comic sort of starts is there's this character who's been working at one of these stations, but through listening to the radio all the time, he sort of develops a repetitive stress injury to his ears.
Yeah. Where
he is constantly hearing static. And my hope was that would be a metaphor for maybe paranoia or doubt, and things like that. And yeah, I mean, it was a weird comic for sure.
Yeah. And now I'm embarrassed because I think a part of it's just because I come from I probably am too immersed in psychology. I don't have a psychology degree, but I dated somebody who was studying psychology a lot. So for me, so much of it just had kind of hallmarks of, maybe it was because of the paranoia and also the fact that this guy is in an empty building.
Yeah.
And he's talking about invisible coworkers.
Yeah.
And I wasn't 100% sure if the invisible coworkers were in his head or
well I think
or metaphorical.
Yeah, I will confess that I purposely put some level of ambiguity in the comic, and I will also admit that part of that is I am not particularly well versed in the world of psychology. And so it was as I realized the story was sort of kind of creeping closer to some of that stuff,
yeah,
I wanted to make sure that I wasn't unfairly representing certain things.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I kind of stepped back from maybe sort of specifically announcing what was happening with the character. But I would say the coworkers are maybe not there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that, that's the thing that impressed me about that's one of the things that kind of impresses me about it is just the sort of willingness to step back a little bit, like, and not say, I'm not going to spell out everything. Like, that's a bad habit. Maybe bad. I don't know. That's just a thing I do.
I mean, it's very kind of you to phrase it that way.
Oh, okay.
I think that like that, so that's a comic I am very proud of.
Yeah.
And I think that is a comic where I made, very judicious choices about what to show and what not to show. Though there are other comics of mine where I do the other thing that you're describing, where it is very explicit and on the page. And, to me, I don't think either approach is right or wrong. It depends on what the particular story needs. You know what I mean? Like there are some great comics that are, very deliberate and spell things out, but they do so in a meaningful and purposeful way.
Yeah. I mean, and I also really like the astronaut comic.
Sure. Well, I'll before you ask,
I won't.
My real grandfather was not an astronaut.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
Yeah, people ask me that, but
well, I mean, it's a very convincing. It's very convincing. I mean, and that's fine. I mean. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you get that question, or maybe that's a good question. I don't know.
Well, I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it is some sort of testament to the quality of the comic. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of funny because I noticed that, like, especially like how you pick titles, like it can kind of set up a question, especially when you start going to conventions and like sort of are displaying stuff in front of people. Like you notice the same things happening over and over again. Like I made a book called Weekends with Carl, and like the only people who were interested in it were people who knew someone named Carl.
Well, yeah, sure, exactly, right? Yeah.
Or, I made a comic called Art of Failing Buddhism, so everybody stops by and say, "How do you fail at Buddhism?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like the title automatically it defines the audience in some way.
And it's something I struggle with a little bit too, because it seems like sometimes when I'm like the books I have about Buddhism, like it seems like people are more interested in buying them if they know that I'm still a Buddhist. Like, there's an authenticity, like there's more authenticity. Like if I say like, no, I'm not practicing anymore, that's why it's called Failing Buddhism. Like then there's like people, okay.
That sounds to me more like they want to have a happy ending, right?
Yeah,
like,
probably.
They want to know that that you made it through the struggle or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if we're talking about conventions, I mean, there's all kinds of, strange interactions and you do sometimes wonder, I think at least in the comic industry, it seems like lots of creators have maybe I don't want to say like direct access to their audience because that's not accurate, but if you're a cartoonist of a certain level and you're doing shows, that's how you engage most of your audience, I think, to a certain extent. And so, you find yourself kind of trying to frame things in a way that maybe make it a little bit easier to tell at the table or something like that.
Yeah, no, I've definitely kind of gone in those directions, and I don't know. I'm going through an awkward rebranding right now, so I've kind of given up on Autobio comics and.
So then, if not Autobio, then what?
Well, I'm doing a lot of like one panel funny comics, and I do a comic called Captain Sadness. I don't know if you've seen it at all, but
I will confess that I have not.
It's funny because I was listening to Dano's podcast. I think it was one of the Lutefisk Sushi ones.
Sure.
And I think we do have one thing in common in that we both made comics about people's heads getting sawed off.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'll
because
happen.
mine was, and I was just working on it this week when I was listening to it, and this one was like, basically Captain Sadness is a superhero who has clinical depression and is frequently suicidal, and so he was saying that if there was any justice, someone would break in here and saw my head off in the name of the revolution.
That's a tough brand of justice.
Yeah.
So is that comic like informed by your psychology background, like you mentioned before?
Well, yeah, that, and also like just my own, like a lot of it came out of my own depression. Like I was in a really like dark place at the time when I sort of came up with the idea. Like
you weren't hoping for a revolution, were you?
I think it was in some ways it was just sort of it was a way to try to talk about depression that wasn't that was neither inspiring nor it was neither inspiring nor was it like completely devastating, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like it was a way that was funny, because I think the thing I've noticed about depression is it's like hard to talk about. Like it's not something you can talk about at like a party or something, or Thanksgiving, or at least it gets super awkward fast if you start talking about it. So like for me, it was like the opposite side of it is, on one side of it, there's like, I think it's called Tiny Robots or something like that. Like it's sort of this, you're not alone. We're all in this together. It's very kind of inspirational. Like you can get through this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I've done those comics before too. Like, and then there's and then there's like sort of the people who are doing kind of autobio comics, like, kind of what I was doing, where I was just so like stuck up in my own head, and just so, like everything I was just writing was like super depressing, and I felt like I was, it just felt like, it was just, everything just felt negative, and it was just writing comics about oppression and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And, this ended up being like a parody of that. It's kind of all those feelings in the form of a chubby, like kind of adorable superhero.
It sort of gives you, It's like a sugar pill. It gives you the vehicle through which to introduce those bigger ideas.
It's a way to sort of make it like visually. It's a lot. There's a lot of white space, and like it's light colors. Like I use light grays instead. So it's not like the kind of dark, depressing thing where it's like somebody's got eyeliner and like black hair.
Sure,
it's not like gothic and visually gothic. It's like it's just kind of like this like pathetic little child kind of thing.
I mean, that sometimes that, one of the great things about comics is that like you can use the visual approach to not disguise the themes, but to, in some ways, make the themes more visible.
Or like contrast with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, the irony of the thing is I kind of started feeling better overall since I started doing it.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. That's the way to do it.
And I mean, it's gotten to the point where like, there was this point where I was like, I honestly thought like, I'm always going to be depressed. And, I just felt like I was always, like, I was honestly feeling like I was going to be depressed for the rest of my life. And it was like scaring me.
Sure.
kind of thing. And now it's sort of like, oh gosh, I don't know if I have enough material to keep doing this comic.
as in you feel the need to get depressed again to make a better comic.
It just kind of happens now, but it's like not a bad thing if it happens. Because I just write down my thoughts and then turn them into comics later.
Well, I mean, that's such a powerful, great way and reason to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, and then I kind of developed that into another thing called Enough Fun Comics, which is, it was basically my way of trying to get out of writing. Like I was getting into a rut where I was like writing about depression all the time. So this was just kind of, it came out of like, have you heard of Drawloween at all?
No, I don't know that.
Well, it's a thing where you do like 31 days and you draw a comic.
Is that like Inktober?
Yeah. It's
okay, so like it's a similar kind of thing?
But it's like you've got this table of all these things you can draw, like, vampires, ghosts, haunted houses, pumpkins, things like that. So I did that, but each one was like a 1-panel comic. And then I thought, okay, I'm actually having fun with this. Why don't I, just keep doing it? And that's kind of what I've done except I don't do it for every day. Like that was every day. So I've been doing 6 days a week.
I mean, that's
a lot. That's a lot. Yeah. And I mean, for April, I'm cutting down because I'm doing them 2 months ahead. And like, I would have had to try to do 27 comics in 29 days in February. And I'm like, nope.
You've turned comics into an endurance sport. Right?
I kind of have.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm kind of at a point right now where, I mean, Captain Sadness came out partly because I was going through this, huge breakup and all this stuff. And like I don't have much of a life right now.
We're cartoonists.
Yeah.
Is there any other story?
I don't know. Maybe there are. I don't know.
I mean, in your heart of hearts, have you ever met a cartoonist who is like going out, living
Yeah,
life to the
that's true.
fullest. You know what I mean? It's,
you got a point. I don't know. Yeah. So,
I mean, maybe the Liefelds of the world,
or at least like maybe people who don't stick with it very long.
Well, yeah. Well, that's that. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
It's, do you sort of fall into that quicksand of comic making?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's tough because like the stuff that I'm doing now like is actually kind of energizing. Like the reason I kind of stopped doing autobio comics, at least for now, is like it was kind of becoming a drag. Like, well,
I always thought. I mean, I've dabbled in autobio a little bit.
Yeah.
It's never something that I've done a lot of, but I always thought that if an autobiographical comic artist really meant it, the only comics they would make would be comics of them making the you know what I mean? It's like, you know,
well, that, and I think also I was having trouble keeping up. Like, as much as a life I don't have, like there is still a lot that's going on. Like, especially, like, you know, I was thinking about, well, maybe I'll do a comic about going to the, you know, Democratic National Convention, or, you know, going to the Democratic primary for the first time, you know, or, but it's just like, I can't keep up. Like,
well, the other thing too is it's like, you know, with autobio comics, there's the story expands beyond the events. Like, it's not just like this dry chronicle. Like, you know, your thoughts and observations and things get mixed in there. And so you know, I think what you're kind of saying is that like even like the most straightforward catalog of events in an autobio comic, it becomes this other thing, and it is difficult to keep up.
Well, and the other thing too is that sometimes like I think a lot of autobio comics start off when you're like single and maybe in college or something, and like eventually it involves other people, and then that gets complicated.
Yeah.
So
you could always do. You should do like you ever watch Cops? You should do like an autobio comic where like everyone's faces are blurred out, right? You know what I mean?
I think I've done that before.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I probably have. Yeah.
I mean, it's a great excuse to do some crappy drawings, right?
Yeah.
Just like these like scratchy masses.
I've never had problems doing crappy drawings.
Oh, well, I mean, I wasn't going to say it that way.
It's
but
okay.
Yeah.
Because you're part of a world that is mysterious to me, which is MCAD, which
sure.
Like I never thought to actually go to college for drawing. Like I was, you know, drawing comics for the college newspaper and stuff, but like it never occurred to me to go into illustration or anything.
Well, I think you know, I mean, I don't have a undergraduate art degree.
Yeah.
I have an undergraduate degree in English with like a creative writing concentration.
That's kind of, well, okay, I have computer science, but I have a minor in English.
Sure,
but,
yeah.
I mean, I took a lot of English classes and a couple creative writing classes.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa. So,
okay.
I don't know. We get people from Minnesota every once in a while.
Every so often?
Yeah.
Are you a native Minnesotan?
No. I grew up in Iowa.
Oh, you grew up in Iowa and now you're, okay, got it.
But it's close enough.
Yeah,
I think Iowans are more Minnesotan than Minnesotans.
The Minnesotans,
sometimes.
really? Yeah.
Or at least we've got more of the, the Minnesota nice, like.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of like always wanting to present a positive affect, even though like.
Well, I mean, I'm from the East Coast. And so, Minnesota nice is. I guess what's funny to me, and I have to also admit, I was on another podcast last week where I held court about Minnesota nice. So
okay.
I won't repeat myself here, but I find Minnesotans struggle to define what Minnesota nice is, but anyone who's not from here can immediately they can explain it well because it's maybe more visible to outsiders.
Well, but, I have this thing where it's like I try to be insanely careful with my words. Like
that's definitely not something that happens on the East Coast. It's, people are much more willing to sort of say whatever comes into their mind, or their heart, or whatever you want to say.
Well, it's just I think like it just seems like with if that happened, it seems like everything would just suddenly be on fire or something, and like people would have pitchforks and like they're throwing things through windows and stuff like that. So
maybe
it's like
maybe that's
the only
good
thing
for some
holding the thing
relationships. Yeah, the only thing keeping Minnesota from descending into Game of Thrones is everyone's willingness to be patient and polite.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I mean,
and also like I think for me too, like a lot of it comes from. And I grew up in a small town, and I think part of it comes from that because growing up in small town is a little bit like Big Brother. Like, sure, it's like I literally had somebody say to me, like, there was a time when I was following my brother in a pickup truck because I don't remember why we were driving two pickup trucks, but maybe he was going to drive it to a place I was bringing back. That doesn't matter. But
as an East Coaster, two brothers in two separate pickup trucks seems very Iowan to me.
Yeah, we had a lot of old trucks.
Sure.
And I saw my brother pull over, but I didn't understand what was going on, so I just kind of went past him. Well, turns out there was a fire truck that was coming by.
Oh, sure.
And like at school, maybe the next week, somebody's like, "Yeah, why didn't you pull over for that fire truck?"
A completely innocuous traffic, not even a traffic
I didn't
incident.
even realize it was behind me. And like I've had people tell me like, "Why didn't you turn your brights off when I passed you?" and stuff like that. Like
that's intense, man.
So there's always this sense of like somebody could be watching it every time,
it's time, like
and gossiping about you. Like
you're living in a sort of like a corn maze panopticon of just everyone constantly observing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. I feel like where I'm from, that same thing existed, but people seemed to not care.
Yeah.
And I don't know now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know which way's better. I mean, it's...
Well, and I think part of it too might be that there just wasn't as much stuff to do in the...
Sure.
So that's why the rumor stuff spreads a little bit.
There needs to be one wild animal badass who refuses to pull over for fire trucks, right? That has to be willed.
Yeah. So, all right. I don't know. So what are you working on right now? Like in terms of comics?
In terms of comics, I'm kind of working on a couple different things. I'm working on two pitches for longer projects, so I don't know if I want to say too much about what those are. But they're very straightforward from like a comic making perspective, just like, dramatic with elements of maybe like action adventure and stuff like that. One is I hope going to be funny. Whereas the other one, the funny one is one that I'm writing with a friend.
Okay.
And then I'm drawing it. But then this other project I'm working on, I'm collaborating with the writer, but it's a little bit more his project. And that one's, I think, going to be a little bit more straightforward and serious. And so, I don't want to say too much about those, just, for that reason. Well, I didn't sign an NDA or anything, but there is another one I'm working on, and I've been chipping away at this for years.
Yeah.
And I tell people about it every once in a while, and they all kind of think I'm insane.
Okay.
I think, I was showing it to a buddy of mine, Will, and he...
Oh yeah, Will Dinsky.
Yeah, Will Dinsky. Yeah. He exhaled when I explained it to him. Which was like, I was...
Like what kind of, like he just, a relief or like
I don't know,
fear?
I was sort of showing it to him and talking to him about it, and he kind of went...
Oh.
So anyway, this comic is, it's like a panel by panel, shot by shot adaptation of Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark music video.
Okay.
And, I think I'm about 100 panels deep, and I just got to the end of the first chorus.
Oh, wow.
So it's just this, like, it's taking a very long time.
Yeah.
But that's something I've been chipping away at for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of comics, the two pitches and the Bruce Springsteen thing are kind of what I've been focusing on lately.
Yeah.
And I've been really happy doing the drawing, and actually the two pitches are the sort of the first time I've really collaborated with other writers.
Yeah.
Which has been kind of interesting for me. I mean, I know lots of comic artists do that.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, it's like, it simultaneously feels like less pressure and more pressure.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you have this person to bounce ideas off of, and you have this person who does some of the work, the labor of writing and creating. But then it also becomes this like, can I curse on this podcast?
Oh, sure. I don't, yeah.
If I do a shitty drawing in a comic that I write, it's only me that has to deal with it. But like, when you're working with someone, it's like this, there's a sort of more visible responsibilities. But I mean, to be honest, that's been fun. And I think some of those pages and drawings are, I don't know if they're good, but they're certainly some of the best stuff I've drawn. And my hope is that, soon, those will be out, or, I'll be able to talk about them and stuff like that.
Is it somebody who's like had experience writing comics before, or?
No, actually, no. It's just some friends of mine who are very talented writers and very creative, but they kind of, I guess, look to me as the comic book nerd that's supposed to like figure out how to turn it into panels and pages and stuff.
That's the thing. I have a hard time like finding people that I want to collaborate with, because I mean, the good thing is I don't have the kind of style to where like somebody will just come up to me and be like, I got this idea for a superhero comic. It's like this guy that looks like me, but he's got superpowers, man. Yeah. Like, but at the same time, like sometimes I get like, oh, I'd like you to do this comic about the history of Jewish folklore. I'm like, no, I'm too busy with my own stuff.
Well, the thing with comics is, at least in my process, and I'm imagining yours as well, that like the actual practicing in terms of making it is a very like solitary private thing. And it can just be difficult to bring people in or to find projects that you're excited about. I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I guess the thing that I find is tricky is you kind of have to care enough to want to be able to get it done. Yeah. But you don't want to care too much to the point where it's like you want to take over the project. Yeah.
Well, there's this like sweet spot of like personal investment and personal energy in the project, but also like understanding that other people are involved.
Yeah. And also, if it doesn't take off, it doesn't take off kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 That happens too.
Oh, that's my negativity coming out. Never mind.
Save it for the comic.
Yeah. But, it's kind of nice to hear you say that, like, cause I think, what you were saying before about, just needing to get out and talk. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this podcast.
Sure.
Is, and also I like to listen to stuff while I'm drawing. So I like to listen to other creative people talk sometimes. So,
well, as a person who's been on a few podcasts, to me, there's nothing more soothing than my own voice. So, yeah.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not.
To be honest, I don't know either.
Because you're probably, if you're telling the truth, you're probably one of the few people I know that actually likes listening to their own voice. But
well, it's not the sound of my voice; it's the power of my ideas.
Awesome.
Or there'll be times. I'm co-host on a podcast called the Kingston Legacy.
Yeah.
And I guess we do an episode a month. And the most like embarrassing emotion I find myself having is I'll go back and listen to like that week's episode. And I'll kind of maybe forget what we had talked about.
Yeah.
And I'll see like a line of conversation or like a possible joke open up.
Oh.
And then I'll be like, man, why didn't I make that joke? But then a second later, I will make the joke in the podcast. And so then I get this simultaneous, like I'm simultaneously very proud of myself, but then also like very embarrassed that like I'm sitting in the studio, like going over my joke, going over my podcast to like
well, that's
try to.
That's probably pretty good. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird because I feel like ever since trying to do especially since trying to do like basically a joke a day type comic, like whenever I'm out and talking with people, like I'm always looking for an opening for a joke.
Oh yeah.
Subconsciously, I don't even know that I'm doing it. I'm like, God, I hope I'm not annoying people.
And the other thing too is like, like reading the room, reading the group.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's certain friends where the humor and you can like, you can hit it, but then, you're out meeting new people or maybe it's people you don't know that well and stuff like that. And it can be, tough.
I understand. Yeah. I'm like, but then again, I'm probably more neurotic than most. I mean, in terms of,
well, I mean, I'll trust you on that one.
Yeah. No, I just, cause I mean, I'm definitely like, I'm the kind of person that like, I'll be driving home and I'm like, God, should I really said that? Like,
yeah, well,
but that probably comes back down to the Midwestern, like, is this thing I said going to come back to haunt me? Like,
well, like I mentioned before, sort of coming from the East Coast and being a bit of an outsider. I used to do that, but now that I feel as if I'm in a place where I don't belong, I just blame it on the other people. It's just, they just don't get it. They just don't get me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think you gotta find not that I'm telling you to get out of town, but go find some place where just the people are a little less agreeable, and you can just blame them for it. You know what I mean?
Well, I did find one time I went to C2E2, which ended up kind of going horribly overall, and I did find like while I was in Chicago, like over time, I was just starting to yell at people without realizing.
Oh, sure.
It's like there was just so much like people yelling on like subways and stuff, and like. It's like I was just waiting in line for pizza and I was waiting in the wrong place in the line. She's like, no, you need to go back to the end of the line.
Well, I remember I used to work in, like lower Manhattan and I would commute there and I kept a tally. And not counting weekends where maybe I wasn't in New York, I think I had an unbroken streak of 3.5 months where I got yelled at by someone every day. And I would say in 95% of those instances, I had done nothing wrong. Yeah. Right? You know what I mean? And sometimes, moving to like a different environment, it starts to warp that characteristic, you become less concerned about whether or not the fire truck's going to see that you didn't pull over and you just announce it,
Yeah. Although I did go to New York and I was kind of scared a little bit, just like Midwesterner going to New York, thinking I'm going to get eaten alive. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
What were you doing? Were you there for a comic?
I was there for New York. No, wait. It was Special Edition New York. I think it was run by the people who do New York Comic Con.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I don't know.
I've done a lot of conventions. I'm kind of the point where I'm taking a break from it.
Yeah.
Because it was driving me crazy.
Well, the convention thing is like, again, like I said before, like if you're a cartoonist of a certain level, conventions are such an investment and so much work, and sometimes they go great, and it's like you never think twice. But when you have like a tough, not even a bad convention experience, but just like a tough convention experience, that's very deflating.
Well, I mean, I've got to the point where I'm like thinking about doing a book of like travel stories, like, cause I've had so many things just go wrong, especially whenever I've tried to save money on travel.
Well, you got to promise me that you do a flip book, like, not a flip book, but like, those comics, they'll sometimes print a comic where like the back half is one story, but then you turn it over and the front half. Do at least half and half, good and bad. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, there's gotta be at least one good story in there, right?
Well, I mean, there were times, there's definitely good times because, like, for me, the good times come from, like, actually talking to people at conventions and, like, when people tell you stories and stuff like that. And like I did a comic about basically being in a mental hospital.
Sure. Well, that's probably what being at a convention feels like to a certain extent.
And then people would actually like tell me their stories about being in a
mental they would open up with you. Yeah.
And that's the awesome stuff.
That is cool when that happens.
Or like finding out like when you go to the same convention again and like somebody comes back and they like really talk about how much they like your book and stuff. And
what's that like? I've never had that happen.
It's pretty awesome. I don't know. Like, I think I've gotten better at accepting compliments. Yeah. Which is it's a weird thing to say, but like, I think there's like, I don't know. It's just like, there's a part of my brain that doesn't hear it a lot of times, if that makes sense. Like, there's a part of my brain that almost tries to protect me from it, I guess, because
because I mean, like, it's accepting a compliment, especially with regards to your creative work, it's sort of a form of vulnerability, right? Because it's like you're admitting that you give a shit about what people think.
Well, that, and also, I think part of it for me is like, I feel like at that point I've set up an expectation.
Yeah.
Like, I've done this good thing. Now they're going to expect me to keep making good things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's,
and I'm going to fail.
It doesn't always work out that way.
But, yeah. And I mean, it's also like, I think it's also like my own self-image. Like I'm conflicting with what people are saying about me compared to what, like I'm viewing of myself.
And that's something that's that's something that's very difficult to overcome, because like when I know when I look at my comics, especially when I look at comics I made when I was younger, it's like I don't even see the comic. All I see is that version of me. Yeah. That made, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's tough, because it's tough when someone who, doesn't know you comes to the work and they see something completely different.
Well, and it's also tough when, like, you get a lot of compliments on something you made like maybe 5 years ago. Like, no, I know.
I know. I remember a friend of mine. There's a comic that I made that's it might be 10 years old now, and a couple years ago he was just like, I still think that's the best one. I'm just like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So,
Or, I mean, the other thing, too, is when you've done, like, multiple books and stuff, it's like, somebody will tell you, like, how much they love this one book, and then you're like, there's a part of me that's like, I've made this other book. Do you want to read the other? No, they just... And then they just walk away. It's
they just want
But, I mean, I appreciate it. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think we've established the fact that you're a huge hit in the convention circuit, and you get nothing but compliments all the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten a lot less. Like, there was a point early on when people like would read my books in front of the table.
Oh, like,
like read the books entirely through in front of the table, or just be kind of rude. It depends on the convention I go to. Like, if I go to, like, I went to Wizard World in Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a huge mistake.
Oh, really?
Well, it's just like, I think it might have been what kind of broke me on conventions a bit, because it's so much of the, like, mashup and poster art, and like, I so did not belong there. And I mean, I still kind of met people and like had conversations, but it was like walking through broken glass kind of thing. Like, and it's just like, those kind of conventions are just like, who's with the Buddha stuff on your books?
Yeah, like, but it's like why isn't there like a busty Green Lantern with like a boob window or something like that?
Or why isn't there like Nightmare Before Christmas mixed with Lilo and Stitch or something?
Yeah. Well, I used to do in Philly for a while. The Wizard World show was like the only show. Yeah. There was no. I mean, that has changed. But, when I started doing comics and was living in Philadelphia, like, Wizard World was the only show that would happen in Philly. So I've done a few of those. Yeah. And I know what you're talking about.
They've gotten worse over time. Like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they probably have.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, this was the first one I had gone. And, like, literally, the brain calculation I made is like, I don't have to get a hotel or anything. Yeah. And I didn't go to the first C2E2, and I've had friends like telling me, oh, it's so awesome. It's so great. And then like the year I finally go, everybody's like, yeah, it was really bad this year.
Yeah, that's how it always is. Yeah. Right?
It's like, I can't win.
Yeah. You either gotta get it on the ground floor or not at all. It seems like.
Although I've been on the ground floor of some conventions that didn't take off. So
that'll happen too.
It's a big gamble. You kind of roll the dice, and
every couple weeks, a student of mine will like come to my office and like ask me if I've heard of some new convention that's like emailed them, and a lot of times they'll go. I'll say no, I haven't heard of it. They'll come back. I'll ask them how it went, and they don't even want to talk about it. It's just like it's like a non-starter in terms of the conversation.
Especially if you're just starting out. Like, I don't know. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
when I say starting, like I've only been doing this like regularly for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It didn't seem that long, but like, so I'm not like super seasoned with it, but like, I definitely, yeah, it's kind of, for me, it's always this kind of puzzle that I'm trying to figure out. And, you know, I've kind of given up on trying to figure out the puzzle. Like, cause I mean, part of it is, like you said, it's a big investment, you know, travel is expensive. And then also that you get to the point where it's like, you know, you can make big books that you can sell, and that's kind of how you make more of your money. Mm-hmm. But the big books cost like are about £1 each, so you can only bring so many of each. So you might not bring enough of one, and you know, and then there's, you know, you have to get the books there. A lot of times I'm just like carrying a giant suitcase full of books and stuff, and like just carrying them around, trying to, you know, work through public transit, and sometimes having to take a cab, which could cost $80 and stuff like that. And it's like, it's just, there's all these little things that can just kind of eat away at you if you let it.
Well, but then there's also, you know, there's a lot that's out of your control.
Oh, yeah.
You know, is the convention well attended? Is it well promoted and all that kind of stuff?
And I want to say, like, I, you know, anybody who actually organizes a convention is, like, I have a lot of respect for them. Like, because because you're part of Autoptic, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned how much respect you have for convention planners, because it's very tough. It's very difficult.
Because it's like, I know it's something that I can't do. Like, you know, it took a lot for me to just put together this podcast.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, you know, I know that there's like a lot of thankless work that goes into it, and just like a lot of like getting the space, paying for the space, you know, and getting people there. I mean, Autoptic is like, I don't know, that the Autoptic was almost kind of frustrating for me, because like it just seemed like magic to me. Like, it's like, you've got this convention that has a name that's hard to spell. Like, it's very like how are they going to find the website? And like, you know, and then like I go there and there's all these people there, and I'm like, how did they do this? Like,
well, I mean, I forget who came up with the name Autoptic. It was, I don't know if I was even at that meeting.
No, I know, and I'm not. I know you talked about this on other podcasts, but
but I mean, I mean, we could talk about it now.
Because I mean, like, the thing just seemed like a magic trick to me, because I've seen, like I said, I've been to first run cons where like nobody showed up, you know, and like I didn't know if this was gonna do anything like at the first year. Like I didn't know if anybody was gonna show up.
Well, I think I mean, in terms of Autoptic, and you know, maybe for anyone listening who doesn't know, it's a biennial, so not twice a year, every other year. We've done it twice. We're starting to plan for the third one now. And it's like, you know, comics and zines and prints are kind of the core of the show, but we're trying to expand it into other stuff. And I think honestly, you know, we put in a lot of hard work, but we also got lucky, because we were able to land a couple of really good guests, and we found a really great space. I think there's a lot that we can do better.
Yeah,
and my hope is
there
that,
always is.
Yeah, and I hope that each year we do. But
and I mean, there's, like I said, like, I'm very forgiving to conventions, because like a lot of people will complain about little things, but it's like, it's so like, I don't know. It's just like, there's just even things like parking can like mess things, you know, like just figuring out like there's any little thing, and also just like the level of organization, and the fact that most of the people who are organizing it, like, this isn't their job, you know, like this is
no, it definitely is not.
Yeah. And it's like they're just doing this out of their own free time, and they're probably not going to get, you know, anything. Well, I mean, some conventions, they do get something back out of it, like the Wizard Worlds, where it's like everything costs money, like, and they're trying to sell you things like, oh, here we can manage your bags for like so many $100, you know, and all this stuff. And
I mean, with Wizard World though, is like, I mean, that's a money making operation.
Oh yeah,
like that's
it. Like
it's like, if I mean, Wizard World is not about. It's not about the love of comics. It's about like, this is this thing that people will pay to go do. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if.
Well, I mean, it's different than like, say, Ape or SPX.
Yeah, very different. Yeah.
Or TCAF.
Very different.
And I mean, and I like those conventions.
No, those are great. Those are great shows, and I think that's kind of, I don't know if we're trying to like, no pun intended, ape those shows, but yeah, you know, it's that kind of thing.
I think it definitely has a different vibe than any of those shows, because I think there's I do think there's a definite like kind of. It's this thing that I'm trying to understand, but I don't fully understand, because I think it's very designerly. And that is a world that's the part of the world that's kind of mysterious to me, because like there's a part of my brain that I don't think is very good with design, which is kind of why I've evolved the style I have. But, you know, cause it's like sometimes it's like a lot of blocky shapes, or it's a lot of really kind of cool looking stuff, but maybe a little bit on the hipster side, but.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm not gonna deny that accusation.
I'm not saying anything against it. I think, and to be honest, like I think now that I know more that it's more of like a homemade driven thing, like.
That was a big part of it too.
Yeah.
And it was, we wanted to kind of make a space where people could come and like meet the people who actually made the things, and that there would, if not an emphasis, at least like an accent on walking away with stuff that was made by
like
hand.
Screen printed stuff and things like that. Cause I mean, I think like a lot of cartoonists, I was confused. Like, I don't, like I've been rejected by Autoptic twice.
Okay.
So, and I'm not trying to like drop a bomb on it or anything, because like, I think I understand it more now. Like, because I don't really make handmade stuff anymore. Like, I don't really fit into like the visual style of it. And I'm okay with it. And I'll probably keep applying for it.
Well, I mean, please do, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, you know, the voting is, it's secret.
No, it's okay. And I mean, I think that's part of it, is just like sort of the clandestine, like.
Oh, well, I mean, we used to, I mean, we applied for some grants. So what we had to do is we had to drop our velvet robe and virgin goat sacrifice budget, you know, cause it's that clandestine, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We used to have this nice, like, table that
like
would come out of the floor. But, we had to kind of dial some of that stuff back. But, I mean, it's, I mean, I think you kind of said what we're trying to do, and our hope is that the show will get better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, and honestly, I'm glad that it's taking off and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, me too. I mean, it's like you know, it's like sort of maybe like what you were saying is about like people coming to a convention and liking your work and coming back. I mean, I think that I will be honest, we have received complaints about things and stuff,
but yeah, and you're doing something radically different than any other convention, really.
And that, I mean, I hope so. But you know, when we hear that people
or any other convention in Minnesota, I should say,
that's
Minnesota's weird, and I know, like,
I think that, like, though, like, you know, when we do hear that people had a good time at their table, or that attendees enjoyed the show, like, that's cool, and I think that that's what kind of motivates a lot of my fellow board members, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, like I said, I've been to conventions where like there was so much love and heart and effort put into the show, and then nobody showed up.
Yeah,
like,
I've been to a few of those.
It's heartbreaking when that happens.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that it's taking off.
And, me too. And I mean, I've tabled at those shows. I've exhibited at those shows. I've attended, you know, those kinds of shows. I think the worst one ever was, there was this like this amateur hockey rink in Philadelphia that they pushed all the sports stuff out, and they were like promoting it for months. And then when you showed up, there was one exhibitor selling comics, and then the rest of the exhibitors were all selling like foam LARPing weapons and stuff like that. No. And there was like a guy selling like bootleg DVDs. Oh. So I actually got the Batman Adam West on DVD bootleg before
you could get it.
Like, this was years ago, but that was sad.
No,
it was a tough show. Yeah.
Well, and it's also like it's I don't know. Part of the reason I haven't been conventioning much is it's really. Everything seems to be getting like hyper niche right now, or niche, or however you pronounce it. I've
heard niche. I've heard niche.
Niche, nash. I don't know, but because like I remember going to GeekCon, which was kind of like that, where it was like there was an artist section there, but there was all this other cool stuff going on in every other room of the hotel.
Yeah.
Like they just
was that a good time? I mean, I've heard. I just heard about that show for the first time. It was kind of
my first like anime driven show.
Okay, sure.
So there were parts of it where like it kind of felt like I was going insane, like with all the weird stuff that was going on around me. Like,
are you not? You're not into anime and that
well,
kind of stuff?
yeah, I just didn't understand any of it. Like, so there's like all of a sudden there's just some guy in a giant mech suit walking by. There's Miss Pac-Man's coming out of Pac-Man's coming out of the women's restroom, and like, I mean,
sounds hot.
There was some guy it started off in the morning, and it was like a scene out of The Shining where I was going to the bathroom, I was at the sink, and there was like some guy in like a homemade Mickey Mouse costume wearing those giant Mickey Mouse gloves.
Oh, sure.
And he was washing his gloves in the sink with them on.
That's pretty gross.
And then he like turns to me and he says, "I made a mistake." And I was like, what's going on right now?
That got dark.
And he said, "I made a mistake. I used a Sharpie on my nose, and when I rubbed my nose with the gloves, that's why they washed."
Yeah.
But like, that was like, it was early in the morning, and like, I didn't know if this was really happening or not.
I'm gonna guess it did.
Yes,
but it was probably a very heightened experience.
It was.
Yeah.
But, all right. So I guess we've probably talked for about an hour now.
Oh, have we really?
I think so. I don't know when we started.
That was fast. I mean, was there anything else you want? I mean, I see you have a few notes. Well, we can do a lightning round.
I don't know. I think we've gotten into some of it. One of it's why comics. So,
why comics?
Yeah. Although I don't know if that's an answerable question. I think that's why I came up with it, because sometimes I don't even know why I make comics.
I will admit that I don't know if I have a good answer as to why I make them.
Yeah.
But I think I can maybe speak to like why I enjoy them so much.
Yeah.
And so to me, like comics, and this is something that lots of people have said, to me they fill this like perfect sweet spot between like prose fiction, which I love, and movies, which I love.
Yeah.
In the sense that, the artist and the writer have a certain amount of control in terms of giving you explicit imagery that shows exactly what they mean, which is something you get from movies.
Yeah.
But then there is still the work that the reader has to do in their imagination to connect those events and make them come alive, which is, almost in the entirety of how prose works. And I think to me, it's just like, it's just such a wonderful way to tell a story.
Yeah.
And that's what it makes me enthusiastic about.
That's one thing that I'm almost kind of like struggling with my identity right now, because like because I've been doing so much like one panel funny stuff lately, like there's a part of my brain that thinks like, have I given up on storytelling? Like,
well, maybe you have, but I mean, that's fine. I
might be taking a break on it. I mean, because I like the storytelling aspects of it, but I think the thing that I struggle with is like finding a way to express that in a way that I can like live with. And when I mean live with, I mean just like having a day job, and not driving myself crazy, not making myself like, not having it be a drag, like, and also being able to finish something and being able to do something with it. Like, actually doing something that an audience might like, like.
Well, I think that like that, the whole idea of like finishing it, I mean, that's something I struggle. Like, I mean, I mentioned before, I've been chipping away at this Bruce Springsteen thing for years, right? So it's like, finishing it is definitely something that I struggle with creatively, and that's definitely a challenge of storytelling. If you start a story, you should finish it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that like there's, like the one panel, like cartoon or one panel joke stuff, in a weird way, to me, that seems even harder. Because you've got so much less, you just have so much less space. You
do, and I mean, I do have to take shortcuts and rely on like stereotypes or like subversions of stereotypes, and I think so. And one of the things I like about Enough Fun is there's a lot more interplay between the image and the words. Like the Captain Sadness stuff could just be a Twitter account. Like it could just be like me just posting sad things on Twitter like over and over again. Like you don't really need the image necessarily, but it's there and it's fun to draw kind of thing.
Yeah.
like with the enough fun, like you kind of need to have the image. Because, like, the text and the image on themselves don't really make sense unless you put them together.
Yeah, the two of them working in contrast with one another. And then that's a cool thing that comics can do. Like, even if you're not doing panel-to-panel stuff, the way the reader's mind can find that connection and find that relationship is really, I think, an effective way to draw them in.
And I also think it's kind of nice that, like, as opposed to, like, film or... other forms of media like video games or whatever, like you don't necessarily need a team to do it. Like you can do it between 1 or 2 or 3 people. Like, I mean,
in terms of the barrier to entry in terms of labor, in comics is certainly very low. When it comes to storytelling media. But sometimes it's good to have a team. But sometimes it's good not to, because then you get just. Well,
I sometimes think like, especially like with me, it's like there are people who do comics because they probably couldn't do anything. Like, like.
I mean,
it's like your own like personality like plays into it. Like,
I feel like
I think like I have a certain amount of control freakishness that like I like being able to control all of it.
And that comes through in the stories and characters. No, you're definitely right. I mean, there's, I certainly met that kind of person you're talking about that could only do comics. I met tons of them on the convention trail. And then like, every year when I meet new students and stuff, it's like, I see that person there as well. I think that's great. Like, I think that's, there's nothing better than finding a new creator or a new book where not just the passion for the material comes through, but also the passion for the form comes through. And that's, it's not, I don't want to say it's rare, but it's great when you do find something that you respond to in that way, for sure.
Because and I think one of the reasons I ask why comics is because after doing this for so many years, like, it's hard to say, like, why it's always kind of amazing to me that so many people want to make comics. Like, it's something that I run into a lot, like almost all the time, like people who just wish they could draw and stuff. And it's like, well, there's not really any money in it. And there's not like, and it seems like the weirdest, most like circuitous way to like look for like appreciation and love, like, from people. Like, like, it's like, do I really need to make a book? Do I need to make a series of books just so I can go around and say hi to people? Like,
well, that's, it's, you're maybe right. Maybe we should just sell the inventory and just start going to bars.
I'm not trying to talk people out of it or anything, but it's just like, it's kind of how I ended up doing it, but like, it's kind of funny that, it's funny to me that people want to do it. Like,
no, it's because, well, I think like what you're talking about is it goes back to that idea of people really loving and appreciating the form.
Okay.
I mean, I don't like, I mean, I don't want to speak in too broad of a generality, but I feel like anyone who I've met personally who has found any degree of creative or professional success in comics is someone who really loves comics.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas at least in my experience, that wasn't necessarily true. Like when I was working in children's television, or when I meet like maybe musicians or like artists or designers and stuff like that. There certainly are people I've met who have great passion for those forms, but every once in a while you come across this person where it's like, oh no, they're very talented, but they're sort of doing it for the buck, or they're doing it for some other reason than just that's what they love to do.
I think maybe that's part of what I like about comics is like it's something that's almost entirely driven by the love of a medium. Because it's not sexy. It's not, I mean, it can be, but like, it's not really like, it's not like, I mean, what do I want to say? Like, it's not something that like, is going to, I don't know.
So I can get you laid.
Well, yeah. I mean, it might. It kind of did for me in the long run.
Oh, well, you're ahead of the curve. Yeah.
But it took like 5 years, but, But I mean, it's not this thing that it's not. You're probably not going to show up on the Tonight Show. You're not gonna.
Well, not since Harvey Pekar got banned from the Late Show. They've put the. I think maybe every once in a while Robert Kirkman gets on a podcast or something like that.
Yeah,
but,
or it's like, you sell your rights to your movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's weird. I was gonna say, what are you good at? Is that
what am I good at?
Yeah.
I can fucking kill it on Mario Kart Double Dash.
Oh,
I'm like
I hear like there's some people that are like savants at Mario Kart.
And, well, you may be speaking to one of them at this very moment.
Yeah.
I dusted off the GameCube the other day. Me and my wife, we just bought a house, and so we moved. And so, like, as happens in the process of moving, you rediscover old stuff and things. So, actually, I think the first night we moved into the house, I plugged in the GameCube and played Mario Kart. So I'm very good at that.
I've been going through Metal Gear Solid lately.
The first one.
The first three. I'm playing the third one a little bit more, but definitely going through a lot of the old video games. I actually thought I wasn't going to play video games for a year. I was like, I'm going to dedicate myself to this project, and I probably won't play any video games till 2017. And then one of the themes for my comic month was games, and then I started getting back into it. But
video games are they're difficult to walk away from.
I try to play video games that have endings now.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah. Or like there's just a point where you can complete it and then that's it.
You can say that you've done it and put it on the shelf.
I have one mobile game that I just keep playing forever.
What's that?
Spider-Man Unlimited.
Is it any good?
It's good, but I can't recommend it. It's like sort of recommending heroin, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's I got really addicted to it, and I've gotten to the point where I'm so far along that it's not as addictive anymore.
Well, mobile gaming is such a trap.
Yeah, it's designed to be one.
Yeah.
Like
it's like literally like I'll find myself like just earlier today I was meeting a friend for lunch, and I got there 30 seconds before he did. Yeah. And it was just like, I have nothing to do for 30 seconds. I gotta get another high score on my Pac-Man 256 game or something like that.
Or you gotta get the next daily achievement, and so you can get.
It's so
some extra
crooked.
Currency.
Yeah. Pay to play, man. That's how it goes.
I know it's like the old arcade system, except the arcade is always with you.
Well, no, I mean that's exactly right, and it's hooked up to your credit card.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like that's such a wicked brew. You know what I mean? Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we could probably wrap it up, unless you could think of anything else.
Well, I mean, was there? I mean, you.
Those are all my questions. I don't know. I mean,
you brought up MCAD. I mean, did you have questions about that, or
I don't know. I mean, it is kind of interesting. I think I've already talked about everything I want to talk about, but yeah. All right. Well, your website is In Absentia Press.
In Absentia Press. It's INABSENTIA Press.
Okay.
.com.
And we'll put in links in. I've got comics at ryandow.com, and I've sort of trained that into a web hub site that goes to enoughfuncomics.tumblr.com and captainsadnesscomics.tumblr.com and all that stuff. So, okay, bye.